Hello and welcome to this podcast series, Day in the Life of an Actuary, brought to you by the Monash Actuarial Student Society. Just a little disclaimer before we start this, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers only and do not necessarily reflect the views of Monash University or our sponsor firms.
This episode is part of a podcast series where we'll be sitting down and having conversations with representatives from our sponsor firms to give you, our actuarial student members, insights on many important topics from university experience, internship and graduate applications to the actuarial industry and work of an actuary.
My name is Harry and I'm the Secretary of MAS in 2020.
My name is Chelsea and I'm the Sponsorship Director of MAS. And today for the fourth podcast episode, we are delighted to be joined by Yanik, Ratilal and Tony Zheng from Quantium. Hi, Tony and Yanik.
Hello.
You want to go first?
Tony and Yanik, why don't you guys give us an introduction about yourselves for our student members who don't know who you are and want to know more about you.
Great, yeah. Now I'll go first. My name's Yanik. I'm an associate analyst at Quantium, and I'm part of the graduate academy program starting this year in Feb. I guess as a bit of an introduction, I like to have a bit of a hit around sports-wise, whether it's something like badminton or table tennis or a bit of cricket. But apart from that, I also do enjoy getting involved in how things work, whether it's at work right now or if it was something like being on the MAS committee back in uni as well at Monash. Other than that, I do like to learn. I know as iffy as that sounds, it is one of the reasons why I also did kind of end up at Quantium. And I also do like to do a bit of teaching as well, which is one of the reasons why I did a bit of high school lecturing and tutoring after high school as well. But yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, awesome.
I guess I'll go away. So my name's Tony. I'm also an associate analyst at Quantium. I started this year working in the media division. Bit about me, a bit different from you three, but I also did actuarial studies, except I studied at University of New South Wales, so a little bit far. I majored in risk and finance. So on the side, some hobbies. I enjoy a lot of sports, mainly play basketball. I watch the NBA. I'm also into tennis. And my main interest and hobby that I spend my time with is chess. So I was president of chess club and also secretary 1 year as well. And I do play in professional tournaments as a hobby, basically. Yeah, and I also like to teach. So I've tutored at uni and also taught students in high school before.
Fantastic. So what were your university years like and any favorite memories from your time at university? I guess we can start with Yanik first.
Yeah, no worries. I guess university years, I guess I had to go to a few different things across the 4 years of my double degree, having done, I guess, actuarial and commerce double degree at Monash. But I guess, yeah, it was made up of things like casual work as a sales assistant at Tommy Hilfiger. I was, as I said, on the MAS committee for the first 3 years as well, and I did do a semester exchange in Rotterdam as well. And I think those three things are probably the biggest things out of the university years. I'd probably say the semester exchange, for obvious reasons, is probably one of the favorite memories. Yeah. It's a bit of a 6 months of not home, I guess. No, but working on the committee as well was really good because at least it was a way of interacting with a lot of other like-minded and I guess relatively high-achieving people on in the actuarial cohort at Monash as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And Tony?
Yeah, I would say similar. I don't want to just repeat similar what Yanik just said, but on the side, I also enjoy doing case competitions. So I, with a group of other close friends, did a lot of like Deloitte case competitions, Quantum case competitions I also did. And out of interest, we also did an international one, which is by the Society of Actuary in UK. And basically that we got a load of experience solving a lot of problems which are very interesting and obviously they don't have a definitive answer to. So yeah, that was those were some interesting times. And obviously, because I did it with a group of friends, so we obviously, did those things, struggled together with actuarial courses as usual, did assignments, and also did applications for, job offers and everything. So yeah, those were mainly, it was like friends and doing all these social activities, which took up most of my university time, or the good memories that happened then. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
there
sounds
you go.
pretty different compared to a Monash student experience, because we still haven't had a lot of exposure to the case comm side to things. So it's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, I guess it's because our societies were a lot more involved, and also maybe it's possible that in Sydney we have a lot more exposure to the firms directly in a way. There's a lot of societies, set up these sort of competitions with the sponsors. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool. Oh, I guess we'll jump on to the next question. Looking back at your uni life, how did these experiences help you succeed in the competitive graduate role application process? Any insights into that?
I guess I'll take this one first. So I think looking back, I feel like through uni, it's about being a sort of jack of all trades. It's sort of being able to do a bit of everything. So it's obviously also important to have some decent grades, focus well, but also it's as for me it's a bit different in a way that I can participate in a lot more of these case competitions. So for those two, it's more you can solve all these problem solving aspects for yourself. And on the other side, obviously, is participating in society events and social activities, or having any of these part-time works, part-time jobs and all that. And me, luckily, I was also a tutor for some actuarial courses in my last year. So in at least the last 3 parts, it was more being able to communicate and all that. So I think, yeah, looking back, it was just being able to do all these variety of things and showing a variety of skill sets, basically.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I guess on my end, I'd reckon there's probably a few different pieces here and there. I guess to summarize, it would be almost like uni, the years through uni was essentially an opportunity to, add layers of, I guess, experience and exposure onto, if you want to call it skill sets, or if you want to call it soft skills, whatever it is. I guess it just adds different layers of experience. So for example, going on something like a semester exchange, I think the biggest thing it taught me was just something, I guess, in general about adaptability, because you're moving into a new environment, not just physically, but it's also quite different culturally, as well as, how people work and how people, interact with each other in a completely different space. And I think, for example, an experience like that, being months away from home, it definitely added that layer of, being able to work in new places, being able to work out what to do and kind of fend for yourself almost. But then also on top of that, I guess looking at, time on a committee and casual work, it's not as though every single moment of being involved in something like that was helping with the graduate process, because I mean, one, you're supposed to have a bit of fun, I guess, which if you don't, it probably doesn't really make the whole thing worthwhile. But I guess you do pick up skills and bits and pieces along the way. Like, for example, being on the committee of mass as well, it was just a bit of a exposure to time management and something that's not specifically related to, for example, studying. It's not as though someone's always on your back. It's something that you're really taking charge of yourself. So that in itself was another layer of time management and, keeping your own way. And then something like, casual work, it's something about, working with a whole heap of people you haven't met before. And that's just another layer that kind of adds to, I guess, how you present yourself in the graduate process as well.
Yeah,
Great
cool.
advice. And Yanik, you also mentioned that you love to study and you love to learn, and that's why you end up working at Quantium. So apart from the learning at university side of things, did you do your self-study in your own time?
Yeah, I guess in a sense, I guess in a short, I did a bit, more so with things that came to something like programming languages, because I know myself, I did do a couple of electives in new and I guess extending new programming languages and extending the ones that I'd already seen before. And I guess I did take a bit of that into my own time and kind of get a bit of setup at home and just have a play around. Nothing too serious, but I guess just learning tidbits here and there. I wouldn't say that I guess helped necessarily with the course that I was doing, or maybe necessarily the graduate program itself, but it definitely did help in terms of just getting a bit of exposure and just seeing how things work in general as well. It's always interesting.
Yeah. So why did you apply to Quantium, and in particular, the role that you are currently holding? And how did you go about making those decisions? I guess we'll start with Tony first then.
Yeah, so Quantium has been an interesting story for me. So my first exposure to Quantium as a business itself was through a case composition. So the Quantium had a case composition, and I did it. It was quite an interesting one. It was about mortgage lending and how we can better look at, the ways I think a TV advertising company can advertise better to its target audience. So that was a really interesting case study for me. And me and my friends sort of did it, got to like a certain stage, didn't make it eventually, but hey, I thought it was still pretty interesting and met some interesting people. So, that was the sort of the start where it stemmed off for me. I was pretty interested into data analytics. And then from there, I basically took a course, which is also actuarial, but it was called data analytics and machine learning. So that was one which I thoroughly enjoyed. It was one which was basically, you start off with data and then, you apply all these, different types of, random forests, neural networks, and all these different types of techniques. And yeah, that was one of the courses which I really enjoyed. And that led to me obviously ending up applying to Quantium actually as the summer intern process. I eventually got in as a summer intern and then did a project for 3 months, which then I obviously enjoyed, and then they offered me a graduate role, and I ended up staying with Quantium. So that was sort of my story with how I got into Quantium. But in general, I just know it was more of a very progression thing. You can see that one thing led to another, and that's eventually how I got here.
Yeah, awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I think for me it was kind of twofold, slightly different to Tony's, I guess. I mean, in one sense, the similarity is that I was, I guess, exposed to Quantium for the first time through the Actuarial Society at Monash, which did help, I guess, in terms of seeing the broader side of things as well. But I guess the one part that drew me towards Quantium was, I guess, the company culture, or the vibes, if you want to call it, that people at Quantium kind of gave off when they did. Yeah. When people from Quantium came over, because you could always tell that, as a relatively young company, the kind of things that they're doing, they seem to enjoy the things that they did, and how they, worked with each other. It seemed to give off a really, really good vibe in that sense. So I guess that was the first thing that took my interest. And then the second was over the course of my uni years, I think I kind of was drawn towards the data side of things. I think having taken a few courses, a few units where we actually used a few different programming languages, whether that was something like R, VBA, some like Python or Stata, those different ones, I think just having used them in different contexts kind of piqued my interest in data analytics and the things that you can do with them, as well as the conclusions and the outcomes you can kind of drive from those as well. And I think having seen what kind of work Quantium did with their clients across a lot of different industries, that was the thing that was like ticking all the boxes for me, saying, yeah, this is looking like a really great company to work at. Hence the application.
Yeah. So I guess different stories, but like the one thing in common is that now looking back, everything just sort of tied well with each other, and you really feel like you belong at the company that you're working at. That's great.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, cool. So why data analytics, I guess? What interests you about becoming a data analyst or data scientist? I mean, we've heard a bit about the computer science kind of being a peak, but what sort of keeps you driven along the way, I guess?
I guess for myself, the the interest definitely started off with, as I said, all the stuff that that you can do with it. So I mean, obviously you've got data, you can do all your basic exploratory analysis, summary statistics, and then you can take it further with a whole heap of techniques. But I think what definitely keeps me driven in this kind of space is all the different stuff and all the different outcomes that can actually lead out of what you do. I mean, I know personally, I'm working in the health and government space, so I guess the work that we do is quite relatively niche compared to other areas. But even within there, like the stuff that I've worked on so far has been, I guess, applied in so many different ways that, you know, it's always interesting to say, hey, you know, this new client brief or this new project actually, you know, has a completely different outcome to what we've done before, and that always keeps my interest going in data analytics.
Yeah, cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I also agree. To me, data has always been like just quite very interesting. It's like it's strange how sometimes it's like we can solve very challenging questions by utilizing not just one but multiple sources of data in a way, and piecing together information, adding upon the assumptions, and then arriving at a conclusion which sometimes you probably won't expect from the start. So it's like it's something that it takes you through a journey in a way. And I think specifically at Quantium, what I've found is like, it's just, there's so much work. There's the variety of work that you can do with data is just amazing. And it's interesting that for the same problem, you can approach it from different ways. And it's funny enough, me and Yanik might agree on this, but the techniques and the ways we solve these are maybe eerily very similar. Even though me and Yanik probably work in different like divisions completely, he's in health, I'm in media. It's like there's sometimes the problems that we face are still very similar. So yeah.
Yeah.
Branching off that, I guess, how often do you get a project that you go, oh, I've seen this before? Or is it everyone different?
I don't think you say I've seen the same project unless it's a refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess, I mean, for me, I know definitely from the ones that I've worked on now, I do pick up the fact that, you know, tidbits here and there are like, oh yeah, I've kind of done this similarly before. And it's just a matter of tweaking it and applying it into like a new context, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But I mean, yeah, unless it's something like a straight up refresh of some analytics you've done before, it's just a matter of piecing together, you know, old things and kind of combining new things along the way as well.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I guess one sort of question. Sorry, you go, Tony.
No, that's mainly what it's okay. You can go.
Yeah, I guess one sort of question I always wanted to ask people who initially study a different field but then end up doing another kind of role is that, was there a moment where you remember waking up and just thinking, oh, I don't want to be an actuary, I want to be a data analyst? Or was it like a gradual, slow realization for you that this is what you actually want to do?
Yeah, I know. Well, for me, well, I know actually. Maybe you might not, and you just realize one day you wake up now and you're like, well, time to change. But
Yeah.
I think for me it was definitely gradual. I know at least in first year and even second year of uni, I was quite set in the sense that, you know, something quite traditional in the actuarial space seemed quite enticing, quite appropriate for me. And I held that thought for, you know, at least a year or so. And then over time, I mean, having been on mass and I guess doing the different units as well and kind of reading out there as well, I think it all added up over time saying, you know, there are these other options, and data analytics was among those. And over time, it kind of grows its way up amongst the list of other options. And now I'm here.
One day you'll realize.
One day.
Is it the same story for you, Tony?
Yeah, similar. I think what also contributes is that maybe in your first 2 years in actuarial, you might not be like, oh, it's not too hard. But then eventually, as you get to your later years, I think we all realize that it gets sort of worse and worse and very much more specific in a way. And that's sort of what I sort of miss as well. In the later years, actually, I feel like a lot of things we learn are very, very specific. And so you also realize that the actuarial profession is also, you know, traditional ones are, the techniques are all similar, and sort of the way, the amount of work, variety of work that you get is not as expansive as in data analytics. So in general, that's sort of, it's sort of like one goes up and the other one's going down. So that's what ended up being sort of the deciding factor. So yeah.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
also on the topic of work, can you tell us what an average day is like for you there at Quantium?
Tony?
Okay, I'll go first. So an average day, well, technically there's 2 average days. I've experienced my usual average day for only 2 weeks, which is going to the office. But now it's an average day working at home. It's a bit different. But I'll say, so basically nowadays getting at home, it can vary between like 8 to 9, 8 to 9 in the morning. Basically in the morning, you'd be like checking your emails. You'd be basically seeing if there's any updates within your team. Then in the morning, you usually have like a stand-up where you sort of summarize what happens, what you did in the previous day, or what you're planning to do for the week. And basically your project manager and stuff will allocate to you if there's any tasks and all of that. And then throughout the day, depending on the nature of the project, so sometimes it's maybe just a standalone, you can do it by yourself and just update with your manager. Other ones, like the one I'm on, is like a very long 2 to 3 month project. So then that will generally lead on to more and more meetings throughout the day, because you'll need to cooperate with managers and engineers usually, because they will help you set up with the infrastructure and everything, which is very important. Because I don't know about you, even though we code, we don't really know the exact details of everything, like how all that engineering talk. So you need an IT person to help you with that. But basically, yeah, it depends on the nature, and then throughout the day, you'll unravel through different types of problems that you do. It'll be different for managers, obviously, but for us, basically, we go through a problem, and eventually, yeah, maybe at the end of the day, we'll also have another meeting about it, but pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much what an average day for me looks like.
Yeah, I'd say there's bits and pieces there that kind of line up with me. There's a lot of standard stuff that we do. I was going to say that I don't know if it is a cliche yet, but I mean, whether it's an average day or not, whether you even have average days in the first place, I don't know if that's a cliche. But I know for me, a lot of the things, at the start of the day, end of the day, kind of things are pretty similar, because generally we have a stand up together with the team just to work out what we're doing, what the plan is, how things are looking. But I guess for myself, I haven't really had the same day happen too many times over the last few months, at least. A lot of the time it's broken up between, what part of the project you're on, or who you're working with, where your team is at in general. Because sometimes you might have a day where you're essentially just exploring data sets, trying to find relationships in readiness for how you're going to be using them into the future. And then maybe once that's done, the next day, or whenever it comes up, you'll be digging into things like trends and trying to flesh out those relationships. And then you might reach the point where you need to do some full-on feature building, or building up variables and things that you can use in different modeling techniques, or even if it's just basic analytics, just building out those features and things like that. And then there's the flip side of that, from the analytics side to the consulting side as well. I guess sometimes it's, your days are broken up by essentially summarizing your findings and summarizing things for slide decks for your clients, or maybe work in progress meetings that you might have with your clients. So there is a bit of, I guess, separation in terms of, some days you're doing a bit more analytics, some days you're doing a bit more consulting side of things. So it definitely varies over time.
Yeah, awesome. I guess we'll move along next step. What's one challenging data analytics project that you guys worked on at Quantium or past internships?
Do you want to go, Yanik?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'll go. I know for me, in terms of specific projects themselves, because I mean, at the moment, our client right now, the client I'm working with in the team, is with Department of Health. And I know we can't say too much in terms of confidentiality and stuff, but I can say, I guess, in terms of my first big investigation and analytics project, there was, I guess, the opportunity to go and do the whole analytics and consulting process from start to finish. And I guess what I mean by that is, you've essentially been made aware of a problem or an issue that might be faced at the moment, and it's from then you essentially, I guess, draft out what the problem is, what the hypothesis is, if there are any key bits of information you need to get from the right stakeholders at your client's place of work, and then going on and doing things like exploratory analysis, building out some sort of appropriate methodology that you'd use to tackle that. And then, yeah, essentially as that goes, it's a iterative process over time. As you apply that methodology, you might refine the hypothesis a bit, refine the method a bit, and pretty much keep getting in touch with stakeholders and people like that. And then once you've implemented that, essentially you're left with essentially a series of output that you need to translate for your clients. So it's a matter of contextualizing that and preparing those slide decks or those pieces of information back to the stakeholder, and then that way it's actually ready for them to take action and progress that forward. And then it's the whole case of presenting that to them in a way that they can take the right action in the right way and in the right time as well. So I guess the biggest analytics project for me was doing a project like that from start to finish, which I think all up took about 2 to 3 months. And in the meantime, you would be doing other projects as well. But something like that, it's a great opportunity to see how things work. All up.
It's a great opportunity.
Sorry, you go, Nick.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, especially for a graduate. But it does sound definitely challenging, especially you have like a really blank canvas that you sort of have to figure out a lot of things. So did you feel sort of overwhelmed during the process, or did you have a lot of help and support from your teammates and your mentors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it was almost like a blank slate. I guess we had an idea of what was happening, and it was just a matter of investigating it in the right way to see if what was happening was actually happening, and if it was happening, how badly it was happening as well. But in terms of support, I think as a grad at Quantium, I know in the space that I'm in right now, we've got a lot of support from the other members of the team. Like, for example, we had our team supervisor who would check in every now and then to see how things were going. But personally, I was working and liaising with one other team member quite heavily over the week, for example, in terms of, if you want to put an average day to this one as well, there would be a lot of, back and forth trying to work out, is this on the right track? Are we doing it correctly? Can we do it any better? And essentially, getting support that way as well. So it was a big task, a bit of a blank canvas, but I think the support definitely was there. And I think that's the attitude that Quantium has across the board, not just in my team as well.
Yeah, that was kind of answered my question I was going to ask, but roughly how big is a team for such a full scale project over a couple of months?
Yeah, I guess Tony, you can maybe answer that when you get to yours. At least for myself, recently it has varied, but when you do work on projects like these, generally you do have maybe at least 2, maybe 3 individuals working on it, and that way you can finish it up quite quickly. The only reason it took months for us was, as opposed to something like 3-4 weeks, was just because of the situation we had with the resourcing at the time. But generally in teams, in a specific space, you might have maybe like 4, 5, up to 6 people. And then within those teams, you could be tackling different projects as well. So you might have like two people per project, for example.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I guess I'll just step in on that. Yeah, for team sizes really depend on type of project. So in previously when I interned, the team size was only 2 or 3 basically, because it was like a smallish project and didn't require too many people and different types of knowledge on it. But the current team I'm on is quite large. It has about 8 to 10 people on it, including engineers, because it's a whole product which we need to maintain for a client. And it's quite a large contract, so we have the obligation to sort of maintain it for them and make sure we do our duties for them, basically. But yeah, in terms of that sort of challenging project, I would sort of reflect on my intern times, which was, it was like a standalone project for me. So my experience with Yanik is actually completely different. So his is more consulting based, while mine have more been sort of background processes and sort of automations on the back. So when I was interning, I can sort of reveal a little bit of this because these are internal processes which basically every company would usually have. It's where, because our company was getting larger and larger, we saw that we needed to design a process which was able to recognize who had access to what type of things at certain times. Because at Quantium, data security is of most importance for us, because as a data company, we can't have any reputation damage to us on that side. And we're working with a lot of sensitive data at times. So we wanted to track who at Quantium at any time had access to what, and if they should be having that access to that. So obviously, if you didn't have too many people in the company, you could sort of just manually track that. But as the company grew larger and larger, they obviously required that. So I stepped in as an intern, and they just had the project to create this thing, which basically wanted me to basically create this automation that is like, click this button, and then suddenly you can show at that single period of time who had access to it, did they move between divisions, between teams, because if they move between teams, they shouldn't have access, technically shouldn't have access to the data the previous team did, right? Otherwise, if the next day they wake up, hey, who deleted my data? And you'd be like, oh, it's the guy who moved on, right? So, so obviously it was really fun for me doing that, but it was also very painful because it was the first time I saw real data, and real data is very painful to look at. You should enjoy it many times and any data any of your lectures give you, because it's perfect. Even with like internal data, which is meant to be pretty sensitive and pretty detailed, it still had a lot of errors. So yeah, and also in that type of project, you had to communicate with a lot of different people throughout Quantium, because you had to access variety of different sort of databases and things. So yeah, that's sort of the high level sort of things that I've done in all the processes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Sounds
definitely a notion of clean and unclean data. definitely seen that already within what, 6 months.
yeah, 100%.
Uni was great.
Do you ever receive clean data when you work on a project?
No.
I'd just give a straight up no to that.
Just no.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's part of the I guess the job, but it's also part of the fun as well. If you want to put it in a good light.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
what percentage of your time is spent just tidying up the data and getting it into good shape that you can actually action on for your project?
Maybe 70% of the time at least.
There you go.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Good insight.
Yeah, definitely. I would say because most of the procedures and all that are already built, like all the standard machine learning and all the procedures and everything, they're relatively easy to just have it standardized and ready. It's all about the input of the data, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you feel that moving to working from home, you lose a lot of the aspects where you can just go to a teammate and ask, like, how do I get this code to work? Or ask like a small question during the day. Do you feel like you're losing out on that part?
That is 100% true. I'm sure Yanik could definitely agree with that. Basically, working from home is great when you perfectly know what you're doing, because that means you get your stuff done and it's like, hey, I have extra time. But then when one thing screws up and you do not understand what's going on, that is when all hell breaks loose. I remember setting up a simple code. It took me 4 hours because of this one thing I didn't set up in the background. And all I could have done was ask them if I was in the office, that would have been easily solved. So, yeah, Yanik, you can expand this 100%.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's pluses and minuses. I mean, working from home, you've got the luxury of being at home, but the flip side of that is definitely being able to just tap your teammates' shoulder and just say hey, I've got this issue, can you help me out? And I think the number of times I did that, even in just the 2 weeks that we actually spent in the office, was already so much to think that now that I can't do it, it's just a pain.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely something not to take for granted.
Yeah.
So getting into the details of your work at Quantium? What are the tools and technical skills that you have had to use for your job?
Tony?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. So I've been in the 6 months that I've been on the job right now, I've went through a lot of different skills. I'd say the main one that we still use is SQL, SQL. So it's a querying languages because generally we need to make sure we get the data into a certain format before we run procedures and things or express in a certain way for slide decks. So SQL has been the main tool that we have been using in Quantium. But also, we're also moving on to a cloud platform or on a cluster. So we've also been using a bit more. It's a Python variant called PySpark, which is sort of optimized because to handle larger data sets. Sorry. So I've been using mainly those two in my time here, and some other sort of niche things are here and there like Git and other sort of coding management tools are used. But in terms of just the sort of coding languages, mainly those two I've been using. I'm sure across the business, we all use various different types of coding languages because different clients obviously have different needs, right? It's like pretty much everyone has access to like Excel and also the main Microsoft Office sort of tools, but some clients have specific needs, so they'll use different ones. So it's a little bit of a nuisance. It means we all have to just upskill based on our client, but hey, that's kind of what we pay for. So that's basically what we do. But other than that, on that, the technical skills are all similar, like visualizing data, being able to check data, just looking through. Excel is the main thing we use there. So basically, yeah, in general, the other things are still standard. I think Yanik can expand on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think at least for Quantium though, I reckon it's the same across the board whenever it comes to consulting in the data space as well. I think the use of programming languages definitely varies with the clients that you're working with, just because either one, they may not have the facility, so you have to accommodate to them, or they already have established facilities and use their own types of languages. So I guess that's the main thing there. But I mean, personally for me in the health and government space, I've been using SQL, so that database querying language as well. That is the main one, at least it has been for now. Though I've definitely been moving towards a bit more R recently as well. I know at least in the health space that I'm working with now, the clients already have quite a big infrastructure set up for R. So that's the one we use mainly on their side as well. So I think those two are probably the main ones. In terms of other tools, I know Tony did mention Git, but we definitely use Git a lot in terms of, I guess, code management, if you want to put it that way. Because essentially, when you have a lot of people working on same or similar bits of code under one project, you need some sort of way to organize that, and essentially you can save and pull and rewrite code using Git as well. I think beyond that, I know, yeah, the rest of Quantium does, I guess, a lot of Quantium does use Python. I know we're using a bit of R in our space. But in terms of technical skills, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily say that the technical skills that we learned in actuarial courses are directly applicable. Like Tony said, it's relatively niche, especially when you get to the second and third year units.
Yeah.
But I definitely say, I guess the statistical side of things have definitely come in handy. Whether it's as simple as something like proportions or weightings, a lot of those, I guess, technical skills and building the, I guess, custom techniques, custom methodologies for your given project or for your given issue is definitely something you would take with the skills that you learn in uni, and then building on those to I guess achieve those outcomes as well. So it's a bit of what you learnt in uni, but I guess a lot of stuff you definitely learn on the job, both tools wise as well as technical skills.
Yeah, cool. I guess branching off that, I've got a quick question for both of you. What's your favorite coding language or thing to work with? Of all the, of all your skills and your sequels and all those different bits, what's your favorite?
I prefer SQL to be honest. It's just really structured and really easy. Like sometimes R I've used in uni, but sometimes it chucks an error and I have no idea what it tells me. So that's and Python as well. It's similar, but I know Python's very powerful. But sometimes I'm not used to sort of the duck typing and all those skills yet. Eventually I probably will, but I just feel like SQL is just it is an old language, but it's so structured and it's pretty easy
Yeah.
to understand just where you did something wrong. Yeah, basically.
Definitely. I'd say SQL as well. Personally, I'd never actually heard of SQL before coming into Quantium. Which, yeah, I guess that's exactly the reaction I had when I first started as well. But essentially, I guess as a quick summary, it does allow you to say, given a database of all these kinds of fields and columns and data, you can essentially say, all right, I want this, this, and this with these given filters, and maybe I want to combine some data, essentially putting it all together into one, I guess, query it's called, or a chunk of code, and essentially you'll be able to output whatever data you want, and you can use it from then on. But essentially, I'd say SQL is probably my favorite just because it's so structured and so organized. You can essentially do, I guess, pretty much everything with just a small set of functions and, I guess, clauses. It's it doesn't take too long to learn, but I guess to master all the different ways you can use it, I think that's definitely something that we'll learn over time. I know I personally do really want to like R. It's hard to use just because, again, as Tony said, when it throws you an error and you don't know that error, it's a bit of a pain, a bit of a lengthy process to work it out what's happening. But as a language itself, I do enjoy using it because it has so much functionality as well that you can use in all kinds of ways. So I definitely say those two are pretty good. I'm sure until I'm asked to use another language, I'm sure some others might move up that list as well.
Yeah, I think having like a structured tool to work with a very untidy data set just makes things a little bit easier for your life.
100%.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a really steep learning curve at Quantium. So do you have to do a lot of study outside of work hours to keep yourself up to date with the latest skills and technologies?
I guess I'll go first for this one. I personally don't think so. Mainly, to be honest, I think in the past 6 months, like learning while doing has been the main thing that's been going on. So obviously, it's not like you get a project and you know exactly what you have all the skills exactly to do it. It's more like you have the baseline of skills that you have, and then as you go through a project, you slowly chip away like, oh, I need to know how to do this, and then you slowly, basically, essentially just learning on the job, as they call it, and just adapts to the project. And to be honest, I think in the past 6 months, I probably learned more than any 6 months I would be at uni, because it's just the fact that, also because it's a project, so it means eventually you have a deadline on it. So it does incentivize you to learn. So it's been basically just learning on the job and sort of just upskilling quickly to be able to do the task. So yeah, I didn't really feel the need or to basically learn outside of hours.
Definitely. I think I'd agree on the point that I've probably learned a lot more in the last 6 months. I'd be tempted to say than in the last 6 years, but I think that'd be a stretch. It'd probably be a failure of whatever education system I was in. But it's definitely a lot.
Maybe a year.
Yeah, maybe, right? It's definitely a lot in 6 months. But in terms of, I guess, upskilling, I personally haven't had to do anything, I guess, outside of work. The main thing for me is what Tony said, and definitely learning and doing on the job at the same time is probably the main thing that we do, and I guess is also encouraged, because I know at least for the first few weeks when we got started, a lot of it was just simple, I guess, tutorials and actual upskilling by doing specific courses on something like SQL, having not heard of it or seen it at all. There is a need to do a bit of specific upskilling and courses in actually learning how to use it. But over time, it's more so once you've got that basic knowledge, when those projects that need those languages and those tools come up, It's just a matter of essentially applying what you learn. If it doesn't work, learning what needs to be done and essentially applying it again and just iterating over that again and again until your knowledge has expanded so much that you probably can't even keep track.
Yeah.
You weren't just thrown in the deep end though, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think at least for myself, we definitely had support, not just in the courses and resources that we had available to actually upskill in, but also the people around us definitely were very willing to help out.
To help, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. I think we were lucky that we had 2 weeks in the office to upskill and just tap on someone's shoulder and ask them. That was very lucky timing for us, but yeah.
Very.
I guess based off that, we'll jump into the next question. What is the work culture like at Quantium? I mean, maybe hard given you maybe only had 2 full weeks of it, but
I think I know for myself, the work culture definitely comes through even from like while working from home. I know if anything, some parts of the work culture come through stronger while working from home, just because you know, the amount of effort and I guess you know, the amount we actually strive for as a company definitely comes through a lot now. I mean, given the fact that we'd only had 2 weeks to see it, but even in the last 6 months, the amount that we strive for as a company has definitely come through, because the amount of effort, the amount of work that we're actually doing right now to win work, but also do a lot more good work for clients is something that's come from the top down into our teams. And I think the amount of stuff that we're doing right now has been really good. But I guess as a whole, in terms of work culture and what it's like, I think the way I'd kind of summarize it is that, you know, Quantium's, I guess, is relaxed, but definitely encourages you to take the step further. What else can you do? You know, how can you actually make it better? And I think another point is how there's always that aura of trying to improve on what you've already done. You know, you've come this far, but you know, there's always something better that you can do and learn that next step as well. I think the learning and in combination with how far we strive for, I think definitely is one of the biggest aspects in the work culture.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think on a more detailed level, I would say that everyone's smart, everyone's intelligent, and everyone's very supportive and very, also importantly, very chill about it, I think. But we always get our work done. So I guess like most of the times in meetings, you can just say, so if we're actually busy, we would talk about the meetings at hand. But if we're not in the weekly meetings, half the time they'd be talking about NRL or like whatever banter they had in the weekend. So, you know, I think work culture wise, we're a very, yeah, as Yanik said, very relaxed sort of company. And we all basically are very supportive and sort of, you know, just basically a bit more, in a way we socialize, you know, very personally and also professionally in both sense. Yeah, that's how I would summarize it.
Yeah, I guess it's very similar to what I've heard from people I've met at networking events who are working for Quantium. They just always seem like they really enjoy what they're doing, and yeah, they can just go on and talk about what they do at Quantium on, and yeah, it's just really inspiring to hear. So more on the topic of how did you actually get to Quantium? So how did you go about different stages of the application process? And any tips do you have that you wish to advise our student members on this topic? Do you want to make a start, Tony?
Okay, I was going to say I didn't actually go through the graduate process because I went through the intern process and got there. But I guess I can still start. So I think Quantium, at least back then, there was like 5 stages or so. So you first apply and you submit your resume, and then you'll get a phone call, basically having a generic questions about yourself. So for these type of things, I think you should sort of prepare or at least have a generic sort of answers to some main things. So, for example, some events maybe you did in any societies, some other things you've done outside of uni. But basically, these things are more about yourself and not as much academically related. So any of these that can demonstrate your ability to solve logically, your other participation and other sort of communication skills. So basically have any of these ready on hand, just so you can prepare to answer. And also the phone call is kind of random. It just might pop up one day. So it's a good idea to probably just prepare for it. But yeah, after that, you'll get an internet, I think, online sort of, was it like sort of like a questionnaire? Basically, you have a few lists of questions that you'll need to solve, and from there, it's like a similar thing. Afterwards, it's like an interview, which you have like a 1 hour sort of exam, which you have. You'll be given some preparation with an email detailing what type of like model or question might be on it. But in it, it's just basically some logical questions and stuff like that. So just prepare any sort of logical sort of any sort of one of those. I already forgot what they're called, but it's been a long time. Basically, there's puzzles. And yeah, basically that's the main procedure for it. And there'll be a final phone call, but that's pretty much similar. But in general, I think yeah, just be sort of ready. Just have sort of some stories. Just prepare what's sort of given to you. There won't be something just out of the blue. So yeah, just sort of be yourself in a way, if I want to say it.
Definitely. I think the word you might have been looking for was case study, was it?
Yeah, okay, case study. Yeah, that's
there we go.
One of the words that I can't find. Yeah.
No, definitely. I think yeah, I mean, in terms of myself having actually, I guess, gone through the graduate intake process as opposed to the internship process, it was generally similar. I mean, we did have a few stages. You know, you did have the initial application. You did have the an initial, I guess, phone interview. There was a bit of a case study, and then there was a bit of a final interview as well. And I think in terms of how I actually went about those ones, I think the main thing for me was preparation. As cliche as that sounds, I think it did work in the end, in the sense that, you know, preparing a bit about yourself, in the sense that I kind of went about splitting up the things that I found, or the skills and parts about me that I found probably reflected me the best, and essentially went ahead and just summarized those ones, how I would explain it to someone else, as if it was an interview, or as if it was just a normal conversation as well. But then also taking it a step further and actually, I guess, getting some tangible real experiences that can kind of back that up, because generally those skills are there because you've actually done something in the past that actually, you know, helped build that skill in the first place. So I think for me, it was essentially breaking down myself, summarizing what those things were, having some real examples ready to use and ready to talk about, and then putting that back into, I guess, a little package to bring into whatever the stage was, whether it was an interview or whether it was a case study as well.
So given your background in actuarial science, how did you actually convince the team at Quantium that I will be a great data analyst, a great addition to your team? So how did you actually do that, and to actually succeed as compared to like people from data science or from data analytics directly?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
Yeah. No, I think well, I guess straight up, in terms of with an actuarial background, I know at least at Quantium, I think it's almost 50-50 in terms of people with actuarial backgrounds and people with maybe like engineering, other commerce, other fields as well, science, things like that. But I think in terms of what was a winning thing in convincing the team at Quantium, I think it's, in the end, obviously you do need a baseline of things like things that help, like good grades, or, you know, those examples that really help to define who you are and why you have those skills and what they are. But I think in the end, what kind of hit home after the fact was the idea that, you know, is this person actually, do I see this person as someone I can work with, and someone I can actually, you know, enjoy doing this work and these projects with as well. So I think in the end, having come out of it and realized that at the end, what I would say now is essentially taking a step back, having done, you know, whatever preparation you wanted to do in in the lead up for the application, take a step back and essentially work out, what about me can I tell the team at Quantium that, I'm in the end a good person to work with, all things considered. So I think that's probably the main thing I'd say. Tony, if you've got anything.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's also similar for me. In a way that I think, at that point, most people, whatever the logical reasoning, however they did in the case study, probably most people are already similar, or most people are intelligent and can figure out all these logical problems and all of that. And I think mainly what I thought I did well in was mainly in the phone interviews, I think. Mainly, I think I expressed who I was through my sort of anecdotes and all my stories pretty well of who I am. And I think it just fit well with sort of Quantium's culture in the sense that, I sort of take things chill. I sort of, I'll get the things done, in a logical way and communicate well with my team members and all of that. And basically, through my story, it sort of links up with how they sort of like to work. That is something that, I've always been interested in Quantum because of the fact that, they take work sort of in a chill way, but they also, still know to get things done when it's needed. So in that sense, yeah, I think that's what eventually, now that I look back and think, that's sort of how I eventually sort of got the role and why I still continue to like the role. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I guess building off that as well, is there anything you did during your application process to sort of make yourself stand out over potentially people that didn't have actuarial backgrounds or anything? Is there any way that, having an actuarial background really helped you through the application process?
I'd say, I guess maybe, sorry?
Difficult question, sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, I guess in contrast to maybe other backgrounds and other courses, I think the main thing for me might have been just the fact that, I'd actually kind of demonstrated my willingness to go above and beyond in some sort of related field, and that related field for me was, for example, the programming languages. In that sense, dabbling in a bit of everything, something new, and just exploring with it. And I think it wasn't necessarily the outcomes of that actually helped in the end. It was more so the mindset, the idea of actually taking that step further and trying to do something yourself that would prove to be beneficial at some point down the track. Tony, did you?
Yeah, I guess maybe I would say that I expressed the fact that I'm open to sort of doing different things, because obviously for actuarial, your main focus was probably to become an actuary. But for me, I think I expressed to them that I'm open to trying and learning new things. And I think that's something that Quantium really resonates, is that you need to continue to sort of learn new things, because of the fact that we work in such a sort of active environment and things change so quickly. So in a sense that we all need to be very quick to adapt and change because a lot of things like, say, coding languages, like right now we might be using SQL, but 10 or 20 years down the track, we may already SQL might be just retired to a language for us because there are better things out there. I know what's coming up right now. It's something called Snowflake, and it's like the modern sort of cloud computing, which will really be beneficial for us. So I think for Quantium, and a lot of these up and coming sort of industries, it's mainly that you need to show your learning agility, and that you're willing to continue to be the better version of yourself in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
can really see cloud becoming a really big thing in the next 5 to 10 years. So there's a lot of room to learn there.
I guess we'll move on to our last question. Is there any valuable advice you wish to pass on to fellow actuarial students still coming through the degree to make making most of their time at uni or transitioning into the workplace? Any advice, basically?
Well, have you got anything right now, Tony?
Me? Not really. I I personally would just say, just be open to things. I just said it basically. Be open to things. Be basically, actuary isn't the only thing that you should consider. I think if anything, by doing actuarial, you have a wider skill set, because of the fact that you're solving so many complicated problems and you've had all these different skills. The degree actually prepares you for a wider range of things. So you should be open to not just actuarial, but also data analytics and other consulting and other types of things. So I think, when you're looking for applications and things, you can look beyond just, the sort of given circle in a sense. And yeah, just, get out there, basically, try out different things and, participate in various things. That's my advice.
Perfect.
Definitely. I think, I think for me, what I'd say in terms of, I guess, the years at university, I think at uni, do make sure you are actually enjoying the things that you do, because I know at least some people that I've come across in the past have had the mindset where they do things extracurricular things, if you want to put it that way, at uni just for the notion of putting it on a resume. But I guess my advice would be, do those things, only if you do actually enjoy them as well, not just for something like resume building. I think in that sense, what I would say is that use those times and those years at uni as, I guess, an opportunity to get, I guess, take your study to the next level, in the sense, there are things that you can do outside of studying that can not just help with finding work, but also just I guess improve on yourself as a person, that would make yourself a really valuable person to work with into the future as well. I think that's the main thing I would say.
That's awesome. So I think this episode has been a really special one, and I hope that it has opened up some new potential areas that actuarial students can venture off into for their future career. So thank you so much to Tony and Yanik for the amazing conversation that we've just had, especially during a busy time like this. And I hope that our audience members have enjoyed this episode and have been able to learn a lot of valuable lessons from the advice and stories that Tony and Yanik have shared. So thank you for that.
Great, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, cheers. Hopefully we'll see you at events in the future. Next year back when we're allowed to have events.
No worries, all the best.
Right,
Yeah.
cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.